Russia's invasion of Ukraine has created what the UN have called the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. In under 2 weeks, almost 2 million people have fled the country. Many travel from one side of the country to the other using a mix of trains, cars, and often covering great distances on foot. Most are women, men or fighting age being required to stay behind, travelling alone with their children through dangerous territory. All seems an incredibly awful situation for anyone to find themselves in. This map from the Financial Times shows where they've gone. So most have gone to Poland, 1 million are there, 180,000 have gone to Hungary, 150,000 to Russia, and 83,000 to Moldova. You can also see that on that map that 184 people have travelled to other European countries. That includes Britain, which as of this weekend has accepted a grand total of 50 Ukrainian refugees. This is despite 10,000 Ukrainians having already applied under the Family Links scheme. The difficulties faced by Ukrainian family members of British citizens was explained by David Carter, who lived with his family in Ukraine until war broke out. They fled at the start of the war, intending to come to the UK. His account here starts when they arrived in Krakow in Poland.
She said, you need to go to the nearest point of the UK VI. I said, right, where's that? She said, there's one in Belgium. So we travelled from Krakow to Belgium. We went to the centre. It opened at 8 o'clock, quarter past 8. We was there for 7:45, all four of us. I explained the situation. They was like, we don't know nothing about this. There's nothing being told to us. There's nothing being said to us. We're waiting for information to come from England to update our records. I said, look, can we get... I said, it says on here that we need to come here to download the biometrics. We need the biometrics doing. They give all 2 children and the wife the biometrics. They put them in priority, next day bags, and said, you will have your visa within 48 hours. So we stayed another 2 nights in Belgium. I went to the office the next morning to see if there was any news. And he said, unfortunately, we've heard nothing back from the UK whatsoever. I said, OK, then we'll go to Calais. So we waited in hotel in Calais. Subsequently from then, I thought, right, I'm just going to go down and book a ferry and just drive on as normal. I'm a UK citizen. I've got my UK passport. This is my wife. This is my children. I'm stuck in Calais. I've been in this hotel for the past 2 nights. And when I went to the border control in Calais, I booked a ferry. The French people let me through. They let me through. But then you come to the UK border in Calais. And they said, I'm sorry, you can't get on a ferry. We'll escort you back up to the office.
So while Poland welcomed 1 million Ukrainians with open arms, that's with or without Polish relatives, UK consulates across the continent are telling British Ukrainian families, computer says no. Adding insult to injury, when refugees turn up at Calais, as David Carter did, they're told that they have to return to Paris or Brussels to complete their visa applications. On Good Morning Britain, Susanna Reid pointed out the problem to Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly in very human terms.
If I am fleeing with my children for my life, and the majority of these people will be women and children, not men of fighting age, because we know that they're being told to stay behind to defend their country. If I arrived at Calais this morning, but I didn't have a visa that had been processed, would there be a place at Calais to process my visa, or would I be told to go back to Paris or Brussels to apply? Because bearing in mind, at that point, I would be utterly broken.
Well, look, I completely understand the emotional reaction that all of us have got when we see the images of people fleeing conflict and trying to get to the UK. We are making sure that the way to get to the UK is quick, it is easy.
Mr. Cleverly, I'm just trying to press the point. If I've got as far as Calais, will I be told to go somewhere else before I'm issued a visa, or will that be issued in Calais? It's a simple question.
Well, as I say, visas are issued through embassies. Our embassy in France is in Paris. But if there needs to be an evolution process, of course, we will look at what that looks like.
It's just not an answer, is it? I mean, sure, maybe you'll have to spend or send a few Home Office staff down to Calais. Fine, just do it. Poland have processed 1 million people. Earlier, Priti Patel proudly defended her broken system.
As of today, only 50 have been approved. So given the desperation, how is it acceptable that only 1% of UK visa applications have been granted? Are you making it too difficult?
So actually, no. On the contrary, we've had over 10,000 people applying 48 hours. The scheme opened on Friday, on Friday afternoon. I was in Poland, actually, on the border, when we launched the scheme. Let's be clear, this is the first scheme in the world that's up and running in this short period of time. 10,000 applications, and yes, grants are happening as we stand here right now.
So maybe the Home Secretary is right. Maybe it is the first system of its kind in the world to be up and running. But countries like Poland, Moldova and Romania seem to be doing fine without such a system. They've simply opened their borders to their neighbours, welcoming them on an unrestricted temporary basis. And the EU as a whole is proposing a blanket right to stay and work for all people fleeing Ukraine for up to 3 years across all 27 states with access to social services, housing and healthcare. This is what Ukrainians crossing the border into Slovakia are handed on arrival. The leaflet welcomes all citizens of Ukraine and families of Ukrainian citizens and provides them with a temporary protection order immediately. It applies whether or not they have any identity documents with them, an acknowledgement of the fact that people are running for their lives. And I wanted to draw attention to this bit at the bottom. Accommodation, food, healthcare and hygiene packages will be provided straight away and free of charge. The GDP of Slovakia was, by the way, $105 billion in 2020. The GDP of the UK was $2.7 trillion, 25 times higher. There's also a lot of confusion within the government about how best to handle the crisis. When asked about the mere 50 applications that have so far been processed, Liz Truss pointed the finger at Patel.
How many additional visas have been given to Ukrainians since the invasion began by the UK?
I don't have the figure, but I think
it's 50.
Yeah, the Home Secretary
it's 50.
Announced that. Yeah.
Are you not ashamed by that?
Well, the Home Secretary has announced two routes. One is the family visa route, and the other is the sponsorship route. And I know the Home Office are working very hard to issue visas.
You're not ashamed that other countries are taking in tens and tens of thousands, and we, who have known longer than any of the other countries that this was going to happen and should have been preparing for it, and your department should have been preparing for it, we've only managed to give out 50 visas so far.
Well, I can assure you, Chris, that we have been preparing for it. We've been preparing for it since well before the end of last year. That's why we sent our forward deployment teams to locations in Poland, Slovakia, to provide direct support to people leaving Ukraine.
Then?
Well, it's really a matter for the Home Secretary exactly how the visa process works. So I suggest that
part of it's done by you, isn't it? Part of it's done by your department.
It's not.
People have to come to you. People have to come to your post to be able to get, as they did in Afghanistan. It was exactly the same issue to get their biometric details taken.
I believe that's a Home Office responsibility that operates out of our post.
In response to that criticism from the Foreign Secretary, the Home Office source told The Guardian that they were investigating a third humanitarian route to UK asylum. So they said, as the crisis is developing, it is becoming clear some people have needs that go beyond what sponsorship can offer, and she does not want to see anyone excluded. So that's a reference to Priti Patel. Hence why a separate humanitarian route is being considered with partner governments. But the Prime Minister's spokesperson knocked that suggestion on the head, saying, "We have set out the two routes we are putting in place. The sponsorship route is a humanitarian one." The sponsorship route allows individual Ukrainians to come to the UK if sponsored by a third party, like a business or a local authority. Given people are fleeing war right now, that sounds like a lot of red tape. The clusterfuck hasn't prevented Priti Patel turning this humanitarian crisis into a propaganda tool.
The British people have come together remarkably to really stand with Ukraine, to help everyone that's in a terrible situation fleeing Ukraine right now. I'm here at the Ukrainian embassy in London, and I've just spent some time this afternoon with the Ukrainian ambassador, but with the community very much seeing their remarkable efforts when it comes to donations and how they are supporting people fleeing Ukraine in this terrible time of desperate need. But at the same time, we've been speaking about how people can come to the United Kingdom and really just working together, listening in terms of the practical ways in which we can support, how we can help to get more people over to the United Kingdom.
You could help people get over to the United Kingdom by informing your overseas consulates how people might actually gain access to the UK, instead of telling them computer says no. Finally, for his part, Boris Johnson has been firm in his refusal to adopt a policy like the EU, where Ukrainian passport holders get an automatic right to stay for 3 years.
What we won't do, let me be very clear, what we won't do is have a system where people can come into the UK without any checks or any controls at all. I don't think that is the right approach, but what we will do is have a system that is very, very generous. As the situation in Ukraine deteriorates, people are going to want to see this country open our arms to people fleeing persecution, fleeing a war zone. I think people who have spare rooms, who want to receive people coming from Ukraine, will want us to have a system that enables them to do that.
It's just so pathetic. I mean, I don't pity them, of course. I just find it incredibly embarrassing. You know, when the Syrian civil war happened and there was a refugee crisis, there was a need of millions of refugees to be housed in safe places, in safe countries, because there was a war going on where they were. There was a crisis on the borders of Europe. Angela Merkel doesn't really share my politics, but this was a very brave thing to do. She said, we're a strong country, we can manage. We're a strong country, we can manage. And she let over 1 million Syrians settle in Germany. Now, that wasn't an easy decision for her, and it did have some political blowbacks. It created a threat from the right with the Alternative for Deutschland, the far-right party. There were, a few instances of terrorism, even though they were, I think in nearly all cases, not committed by people who had actually come over. But, there were political difficulties that came with that. But she said, we're a strong country, we will manage. And now what has happened is you had over 1 million refugees, the vast majority very well integrated into German society. That policy, which people initially said was going to be the end of her career, is now popular. The majority of people in Germany think that was a good decision. And because her politics was to say, we're a strong country, we can manage. Boris Johnson's politics is to say, even if there is the most damaging humanitarian crisis we've had in Europe for a generation, we're still going to have to do the checks and balances. We're still going to have to see all of the various forms before we give anyone safety in this country. Why? We're a big, strong country. We're a big, strong country with a big GDP. Why can we not say, come here first, and then within your first month, go and register at the Home Office, right? That would be a pretty easy thing to do. Instead, we're saying, we can't possibly as a country bear to have anyone here without having, checked them first and ticked all the boxes first, even if that means that someone with, their immediate family, they've all just fled from Ukraine. They're going to have to stay in hotels in Belgium and France. Why can Belgium and France have these people in their country without them having ticked all of these boxes first? What makes Britain so special, so pathetic, that we have to say, oh, we're going to have to do this the normal way. Sorry if that means you're going to have to wait. Priti Patel bragging, oh, we've set up this really bureaucratic system quicker than everyone else. That's because the other people didn't set up the bureaucratic system because they realized it's completely inappropriate in this situation. To make people, I was listening to it on the radio, they have to get their biometric data, all of these various, really, really red tapey things that is just really, really appalling to enforce on people in this particular situation. And it is, as well as being outrageous, as well as being inhumane, it is also just fundamentally pathetic. It was the same with this Syrian story as well, by the way. Germany let in over 1 million people. Britain, I think, housed about 20,000 people. And still we kept saying, oh, we're doing so much. Oh, how can we possibly, it's still a huge news story, like society was about to collapse because we'd let in, what's 220,000 compared to 1 million? 1/50th of the 1 million people that Germany let in. And we're saying our society is going to collapse. By the way, I'm talking about Germany because it's a very similar country to us. Lebanon, a much smaller country, a much poorer country, settled 1 million Syrian refugees, and they didn't talk about society collapsing. It's absolutely pathetic.